Hey students, here we are, Unit 7. This is your Unit 7 Day 1, and we're going to talk about some animals. Alright, here we go. So, ecology. Ecology is a certain type of science. It's a science where it studies the interactions among living things, between their surroundings. And ecologists are going to study nature in all different ways. So this picture here is a guy, he's studying a habitat. He would be looking at the plants. He would also be looking at whatever that furry thing is in his hand. He's measuring it. He's going to notice all the different characteristics about any of the living things in that environment. Now, we have something now, an organism. An organism is one individual living thing. So for example, this lion, it's one individual lion, or it's one of those individual antelopes. Those would be an organism. Next is a population. So a population, here we would have the population. All these guys are a group of the same species that lives in one area. Now, on your test, you're going to have to give 2 examples of population. You can talk about all of the high school students living in Los Angeles. You could say all of the dogs on Avalon Boulevard. You could say, all of the pets in a pet shop. Those would be a population, a group of the same species that lives together. Now, a community is a group of different species that live in one area. So here we have a lion. He is a different species than the antelope. Also, there's probably some little rodent things living here. There's also some insects. All of those would make up a community. Now, an ecosystem. I like this little illustration. It's nice. An ecosystem includes all the organisms. So, it's not just all the animals and the lizards and the insects. It's also the soil, the rocks, the water, even the climate. Those are all things that work together to form an ecosystem. So they are non-living things. Finally is a biome. Biomes are huge regions, and they represent certain climate conditions and certain plants that could live there. For example, the rainforest is a biome. So, in the rainforest, we have the most diversity of species, whereas the tundra, which would be like Alaska or even Antarctica, has the least diversity. Now, a scientist, he might use research methods such as he might use observing, or he's the scientist in this example here. He might experiment. He may use models. So he also might look at recent kills or feces, meaning if he's walking around in a forest and he's studying that area, he's going to notice if there were any, if there's any carcasses of an animal, and he could notice how long ago it was there. Or if he sees any poop on the ground from the animal, he's going to know how long it's been since he was there. Now, when we do experiments about nature in a lab, it's so much easier to control the situation because, nature is so unpredictable. There's just no way to control that. But so it's nice because we can have the control as scientists. But then the problem is that, it's not really exactly like it is in the wild. So here's a picture of some scientists with an experiment. And you can see they've got some different types of water there. They're probably studying an animal in there, maybe insects. And so they can manipulate the conditions this way. Now, we could also use modeling. Not like, ooh, I'm a hot model on a runway. Models as in we can use computers to simulate, as in a model, of something that's really hard to actually study or really hard to really pin down. We can also figure out cause and effect. We can plug into our computer what happens if there's a forest fire. The computer can have an idea of how much devastation that would be. Now, we have two different types of factors. We have one that's called biotic, and we have one that's called abiotic. I wonder if you guys remember when we talked about anaerobic, and we put that in front of it, it meant not, right? So, a biotic factor is any living thing. It can be plants, it could be animals, it could be bacteria. Any living thing that plays a role in an ecosystem. Now, abiotic are things that are not living. So the sun is not living, water is not living, moisture is not living, temperature is not living, wind. However, all these non-living things also must interact to ensure the survival of the organisms in the environment as well. All right, so an ecosystem, now it really relies on a lot of biodiversity. Bio means life. Diversity means different, right? The variety of living things in an organism. Now, tropical rainforests have the most diversity. You'll be responsible for knowing that. Tropical rainforests have the most diversity. They have 50% of the Earth's plant and animal species, but they're only 7% of Earth. So the rainforest, it's like about in South America somewhere. And it has the most, it's a small area, but it has the most, it has tons of kind of animals, tons of kind of plants. So it has the most biodiversity in the rainforest. Oh, look at him. He's so cute. Now, a change in the population of a species could disrupt not only that species, but it could disrupt other species in the ecosystem, and that's called a keystone species. So when a keystone species, if something affects it, like for example, there's some kind of disease and it's affecting these otters, then there's going to be problems for the other animals in that ecosystem. So whatever animals it eats, it will have an effect on that. It will have an effect on whatever it eats it. I don't know, maybe sharks? So you can think of a wheel that's flat on a car. Yeah, you'll do your Mr. Parr in this minute. I'll send you the link. Okay. Now we have some different types of trophic levels, they're called, and troph means energy. The bottom of the trophic level or the energy pyramid is called the producers. So producers make their own energy. And, a producer, for example, here would be a flower, would be phytoplankton. These guys make their own energy through photosynthesis. They're called autotrophs. Auto means self. Self. Troph means nourishment or energy. Self-nourishing. Autotroph. Consumers, that's what we are. We're consumers. We get our energy from other living or once living resources, like plants and animals. So also known as heterotrophs, we get our energy from different sources. Perhaps we eat hot Cheetos one day, and then we'll eat a, egg omelet the next day. And then we'll eat a hamburger for lunch. We're eating food from many different sources. So hetero means different. Remember that? Hetero means different. Now, most producers get their energy from sunlight. However, some organisms create their own food by chemosynthesis. You guys, this is on the test. If you don't remember it, I'm sorry, but it's chemosynthesis. Chemo means chemicals. So they use chemicals to make carbohydrates. Chemosynthesis. Remember it. Now, in an ecosystem, energy is going to flow from most to least. So here in this picture you see there's a picture, it has some grass, so it starts at the grass. The grasshopper eats the grass. The whatever mouse, I think, eats the grasshopper. The snake eats the mouse, and the hawk eats the snake. So he'd be the king of this ecosystem, but the grass is where the most energy is located. There's two types of eaters, specialists and generalists. Specialists can only eat very specific foods. For example, if you are the kind of person that says, I will only eat In-N-Out hamburgers. Generalists, or also specialists could be like, do you know like a picky kid? Man, nothing bugs me more than a kid that is really picky about their food. Where they're, oh, I'll only eat chicken nuggets or whatever. Like, they would be considered specialists. Whereas a generalist is going to enjoy a wide variety of foods. They can eat any hamburger from any burger joint, and it doesn't have to be ketchup only. So, specialists versus generalists. Trophic levels. So remember I said trophic means energy? They are going to determine the amount of energy in a food chain. Always, always, always at the bottom we have producers. Producers are the biggest source of energy. Producers get their energy from the sun. So that is the biggest deal there. They get their energy from the sun. This is going to have the most, has the most energy. Then we have some different consumers. We've got primary consumers. Primary consumers are going to be herbivores, meaning they're going to only eat plants. Secondary consumers are going to be carnivores that eat herbivores. And tertiary consumers are carnivores that eat carnivores. We are considered tertiary consumers. We're the tippy top of the food chain. But that does mean that we get the least amount of energy from our food because energy flows from the bottom to the top. Now, a food web can show how complex the feeding relationships are in an ecosystem. I believe you have this picture, you guys, on your notes here. So you can see that kind of everybody in that system is pretty dependent on the other. The more biodiversity, the more biodiversity, the more complex the web. So somewhere like the rainforest would have a very, very complex food web. Now, what's kind of interesting is that anything that's here on Earth, whether it's water or carbon, which is an element, has been here for millions of years, like actually since the dinosaurs. So we have carbon atoms in our body. We breathe in carbon atoms. They were probably once a part of a tree or even a dinosaur. Pretty crazy. This picture here shows the water cycle. You will be responsible for knowing that. We'll practice that. But any of the water now is the same water that's always been. It's really crazy. So the first cycle is called hydrologic. Hydro means water. I hope you kind of already knew that. So hydrologic cycle is the water cycle. Biogeochemical cycle is going to be geological parts. That's rock. Geological parts is rock. Next we have the carbon cycle. Now carbon we know is, it's going to come off as combustion. This is coming out of a chimney, but oh boy, did we get that out of our cars. That carbon is going to be in the air, and we know that the plants need that carbon into its for its photosynthesis. When the plants also animals, when we breathe out, we're animals. We breathe out, we give carbon. So we need these trees because the trees are going to take in all that carbon dioxide, and I know that they give us oxygen. So there's a carbon cycle and there's a separate oxygen cycle. These two cycles are completely dependent upon each other. Finally is the nitrogen cycle. This mostly happens underground. You can see here that we have a deer, and this deer is going to eventually die, and it's also going to poop. This is its poop. It's going to poop, and its poop is going to decay into the soil, and it is going to, and also it's going to pee onto the ground, and it's the nitrogen in both of those things is going to go into the soil deep down, and bacteria in the soil are going to make it so that plants can use this nitrogen. So it's a cycle. Then the deer will eat the plant that has some of the nitrogen. It will pass through the deer, will go into the, and there's the cycle. Okay, so as you get higher up, you will see fewer amounts of energy. So the most energy is going to be at the bottom. Sunlight is the main energy source for producers. That's why there's the most energy here, because the sun provided it. The sun, imagine so much energy in the sun. And we lose so much energy as we go up this food pyramid, so that this is the most, this has the second most, this has the third most, and finally the owl has the least amount of energy. So the owl's going to have to eat more in order to keep it going. Now we show energy pyramids. That's what you just saw. Compares how energy is distributed by producers. Now there's something called biomass. Biomass is all of the dry mass of an organism. So dry mass meaning grass and such. Looks like we're done. So now it is time for your secret password. Secret password. And do not write me this question. You need to write the answer. Don't just write the question. I won't take it. These are prepping you for what level has the most energy. What level has the most energy? Which trophic level? All right. See you in video. Oops, I need a Y. See you in video 2. Bye.